All right, guys, let's get into some climate weather, or worldwide weather, I should say. Extreme rainfall, more than 2 months worth of rain in 9 hours. Severe floods hit Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Now, at first, when you see this, you're thinking, holy hell, 2 months of rain in 4 hours? But mind you, this part of the world receives 5.9 inches of rain in 2 months. But that fell in 4 hours on Monday night, April 8th. This is more than the average for the whole month of April, which is 3.74. So they almost doubled it. Well, close to doubling it. Copacabana fourth, near famous beaches of Copacabana and Ipanema. Is that how you say that, Mari? Ipanema? Received around 9.68 inches of rain in 9 hours. That's 2.6 months of rain in April. If confirmed, it will mark the highest total 24 hours ever recorded in the city of Rio de Janeiro. 9.09 inches in a 24-hour period in a botanical garden neighborhood. Lots of footage here, like always at watchers.news. Rain quickly turned roads into rivers, sweeping up cars and uprooting trees. Schools have been closed and residents urged to avoid all non-essential traffic. At least 6 people have been killed, officials said on Tuesday. The death includes 2 adults, a minor. Both were buried in a car by a mudslide. Another mudslide hit Crivia, leaving 2 women dead, fire department officials had said. It says here 3 people were killed. In northeastern Brazil, April 5th, several days of heavy rain increased rivers and lakes, lagoons, flooding homes and plantations. The deaths occurred in the Piauí capital, Teresina. The city recorded more than 7.8 inches of rain between April 1st and April 6th, 2019, and 3.3 inches of rain in 24 hours on April 4th and April 5th. And we will put the links in the description later on in the show. And while we're talking about floods, it's all over. Severe flash floods hit Accra. At least 7 people dead or missing. Ghana. At least 5 people were killed and 2 remain missing after a surprisingly strong storm hit the capital Accra, Ghana, late April 7th, 2019. It says here that heavy rain lasted less than 2 hours, leaving behind flooded roads and scores of stranded motorists. Running water spilled with chalk drains onto the roads, with Kwame Nkrumah interchange left pedestrians with no choice but to walk through the water, which was around knee-high level. The worst affected area was Kwame Nkrumah Circle, where most of the roads were impassable. The area now unofficially represents the benchmark of Accra foods. Authorities say they have already begun desolating storm drains ahead of rainy seasons that they were getting ready to enter into. Heavy rain also hit last year, June 18th, 2018, causing destructive floods across the city and leaving at least 3 people dead and 4 people were missing. The floods caused chaos across the capital, left many people trapped in their homes and vehicles. Local media reported numerous destroyed homes in the greater Accra region, where 3.3 feet of water. That's how deep it was as far as floodwaters. The flooding has again exposed poor drainage system in Accra, which comes in for severe criticism every rainy season. But the difference here is that we are seeing more and more extreme rainfall. And, look at the village we're talking about here, guys. It's not like we're talking about state-of-the-art infrastructure. So these are the areas that are most vulnerable. And then, places in the United States that have older infrastructure, places like Buffalo, Detroit, Cleveland, Boston. We're talking very old infrastructure. And yes, there is work being done to upgrade some of these. But, if you're in an area like this, and this is just a minimum type weather phenomenon, all right? This is nothing to do with grand solar minimum, but this could be a more frequent scene during the grand solar minimum. All right, so continue on with worldwide weather, climate news here. Sierra Nevada snowpack at 162% of normal. California water supply dream. Notice they avoid calling it I don't know what dream he was implying for, but sorry about that, folks. Snowpack at the station was at 200% of average, while statewide snowpack was at 162% of average. This is great news for the water supply, but water conservation remains a way of life in California, rain or shine. According to the California Department of Water Resources, the state has experienced more than 30 atmospheric rivers since the start of water year, 6 in February alone, and statewide snow water equivalent has nearly tripled since February 1st, officials had said. It says here Phillips Station now stands at 106.5 inches of snow depth and a snow water equivalent of 51 inches. A little rusty, folks. Which is 200% of average for the location, against 162 average statewide. And of course, being California, based on snowpack numbers, we have potential for some minor flooding due to melting snow. We remind folks to always stay vigilant and aware. This is according to the DWR chief of the Division of Flood Management. Here, the dark purple is in the 30 to 40 feet range. You do see some pink in there. I'm, imagining that's the extreme elevations, but we are seeing 50-foot plus snowpack right now. The state's largest 6 reservoirs currently hold between 106 Oroville and 132 Malones of their historical averages for this date. Lake Shasta, California's largest surface reservoir, is at 109% of its historical average, and it sits at 89% capacity. So interesting enough, the flood is over, but the responsible thing is the conservation of water. And, when you think about it, when your state's been in a drought for 3+ years, extreme dry weather, the wildfires that we've had out there, that have devastated parts of California, it's understandable for people to still be conservative with the water, to be alert. These types of years that we've had out there, the last 3 years, especially fires, we've had a couple doozies. Nothing like what we used to see in the 20s and 30s, but still, we've had some pretty bad fires out there. So these people are out in California. I think their management is doing the right thing out there. And like I said, you can tell these people are scarred from the drought seasons. They're going to take advantage of the surplus, no doubt, and continue to be conservative in ways that's helped them to get through the drought in the first place. And hopefully they build a new surplus. And a little solar science tonight. So NOAA, a lot of people have been talking about this. NOAA wanted to point out that no indication that we are currently approaching Maunder minimum type minimum in solar activity. Now, let's think about this really quick, guys. This is the same NOAA that predicted that El Nino had a 90% chance of development in October of 2018. Continue to push that 90% all the way through December almost. So, and when El Nino finally did form, there wasn't a lot of gloating. I'll give NOAA credit for that. But there also was a period of time where NOAA was trying to explain to us that we were going to experience a strong El Nino. And now the same NOAA is trying to convince people all around the world that we are not approaching a Maunder type minimum in solar activity. I just don't know how credible NOAA is at this point, in my opinion. But this is what we talked about, and not a lot of channels will come out and read these things, because there are people out there who believe that we are in the onslaught of the grand solar minimum. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. I have no real reason to believe that we are or not, other than the fact that from what the information that I've seen, it makes more sense that we do see a solar cycle 25 before we reach any type of grand solar minimum. So, but the thing that's important to point out is that this particular minimum has been deeper, and it's been a weaker solar cycle over the last 200 years. Okay, So what does that mean when you read papers that talk about we haven't seen this deep of a minimum or a week of a solar cycle in 200 years? And this is why you still have to monitor this situation year to year, decade to decade, because we're seeing signs of a weaker sun. And each cycle that we go through, we're still seeing signs of increased cosmic rays entering our atmosphere. They'll continue to influence the atmosphere with seeding our clouds, highly charged particles getting into our atmosphere because the magnetic connection, the magnetosphere, is weak. We'll continue to see these heavy precipitation events, especially getting really bad in 2019, 2020. And like this article talks about here, Solar Cycle 25 prediction panel experts say that Solar Cycle 25 may have a slow start, meaning this could be a very quiet minimum, which we are expecting the real beginning of it late 2019 or early 2020. But Solar Cycle 25 prediction panel experts said Solar Cycle 25 may have a slow start, but is anticipated to peak with a solar maximum occurring between 2023 and 2026 and a sunspot range of 95 to 130. Now this is well below average number of sunspots, with typically ranges of 140 to 220. And I believe Solar Cycle 24 was somewhere in between the 80 to 120 range. Here we go, 82 spots. It says here the maximum for April 2014 with a peak average of 82 spots. So just to let you know, the peak average was 92 or 82 sunspots in Solar Cycle 24, and now they're saying that we're going to look at a peak range of 95 to 130, which, you know, here we are. This is what we're talking about. We're talking slightly higher numbers in Solar Cycle 25, and to me it's alarming to see almost an identical decline of solar activity once we get past 2026 into the 2030s. That's where I think the real big trouble begins to happen. I mean, look, right here, guys, we're going to notice a lot. We're already experiencing it across the Midwest with all the major flooding out there. It's getting farmers late into their fields to plant. Some of them can't plant because all of their grain has been flood damaged. I mean, so we're already seeing the serious effects of a deep minimum. Now think about going through another decade of these events that continue to happen the way they're happening right now at this rate. Not much is going to change with this next solar cycle. And for all those out there who think that this is going to wake the sun up in 25 and go back to a normal maximum as if it's going to skip a grand minimum cycle, the sun has shown us it's almost right around the same time every time we are due for a grand minimum. The sun does indeed go into its grand minimum. The argument seems to be between if it's going to happen now or if it's going to happen in the 2030s. And I don't think it really, to me, even if your thinking is now and it's not now, there's still a lot of things that have to do with solar forcing variables here. And that's the thing that always kills me when I hear people talk about how people on this side of the fence about the climate, when they say we deny the science. But that's all this channel is based on, is the science of the sun. And, I've seen comments where people said that we're boring, and it's because we're showing the boring, raw science of how this works. Guys, I'm going to have a pretty educated guy on the topic who's going to help us put some perspective on some order on how to present that way, because I know there's a lot of new people that come to our channel. Not everybody understands what we're talking about right now, and I think there's a lot of things that we can do in the future to help communicate to people on how to explain what's happening, the risks, and what to do to prepare for it as well. But that's coming at a later date. But reading on in this article here, guys, so they're saying, and this is a key quote right here, guys, because a lot of people will twist and turn this into their agenda, but I'll read it word for word. It says we expect solar cycle 25 to be very similar to cycle 24, another fairly weak cycle preceded by a long, deep minimum. It said panel co-chair Lisa Upton, PhD, solar physicist with Space Systems Research Corp. The expectation that solar cycle 25 will be comparable in size to cycle 24 means that the steady decline in solar cycle amplitude seen from cycles 21 to 24 has come to an end, and that there is no indication that we are currently approaching a Maunder minimum type solar activity. All right, so let's clear this up. All this is saying is that we have seen declination of solar cycles from 21 through 24, and some scientists are basing because solar cycle 25 is going to be slightly above average or above what we just experienced, is triggering the uptick once again of solar activity. And I couldn't disagree with that more. And I don't think the people here writing this article believe that as well. They're presenting the information as given, and that's like I said, this is coming from NOAA. Some of these people are NOAA related, and they've been trying to tell us all year long how El Nino is going to form, 90% confidence. And I'll get to that here in a little bit, but it's starting to peter out already. Also, what's up with that has a 2019 forecast for El Nino, and some interesting things about that as well, as conditions for El Nino could be over by June, July, August, but there's some indication that it could be a moderate to weak El Nino situation again, or near neutral by October of next year. So we'll have to take, that's still far a ways out. I'm impressed with people that can predict these cycles, INSO and everything, but I've seen a couple people who I trust what they say and weather and other stuff, where they have compared data, matched it up to similar situations and scenarios almost to the T, and it didn't do anything that that person thought that it was going to do. And these are well-respected weather meteorologists and scientists. So, guys, we're entering the unknown with solar cycle 25, and I think I've been saying that since 2017, is that this cycle truly is going to be the unknown. Yes, we've seen some pretty spectacular looking sunspots, but we're talking about one spot, one sunspot region that's the size of 12, the number 12. I mean, we're not talking about, sunspot number 59 here. Or like the last time we saw this sunspot, it was actually at sunspot number 49. So it's decreased in sunspot number count. We'll leave the link in the description. And while we're talking about minimums here, solar minimums and weather conditions, but before I leave this, though, I do want to say that I'll bring up some charts for you guys to look at, and we'll show you where the declination is not ending if you look at previous solar cycles and what we're about to go through. We haven't hit the bottom yet, and that's what I'm saying. This is still the cycle of unknowns. We can't cancel out that we are heading into a grand solar minimum right now. There's so much information to look at and absorb, and hopefully we're going to get a clear answer on that too this summer when we get a chance to talk to Valentina Zarkova once again. But I wanted to point this out real quick too before we move on. There was a study that showed that if we had a Carrington event like 1859 today, we would be looking at about 6.2 trillion in damages. So that's just an interesting number as far as how much damage it would cost. But my question is not so much of the price tag, but the timetable of how quick you could repair the grid after a possible EMP or a large type solar storm that hits the Earth's magnetic field. So interesting to point out there. All right, let's take a look at the hurricane forecast since we're talking about weather. There's a couple different numbers out here. The TSR, they released their earlier predictions back in December of 2018, December 11th to be exact. And guys, I apologize here. The screen I need to adjust. Let's see if I can get just a little bit more here. I'm not getting all the picture. All right. So what we're looking at, and it still didn't get it all. Let's move this slightly so we can take a look at this, and I'll move it back. All right, so this is the predictions for 2019's hurricane season. 12 storms to be named. 5 hurricanes out of this, and about 2 major hurricanes from TSR. The CSU is similar, 13 named storms, 5 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. And AccuWeather is 12 to 14, 5 to 7 of hurricanes, and 2 to 4 major hurricanes. So interesting stats here that everybody's pretty much in agreement that we're not going to see a lot of major hurricanes. You know, it's not going to be an active season. They're basically comparing it close to 2018, really, if you ask me. 2 major hurricanes. I think they had 4 or 5 hurricanes and somewhere in the same area, 14 to 18 named storms. So I guess the question I want to ask to Al Gore and all of them is, you claim that with the rise of CO2 that man has put in the atmosphere, that we're going to see even more severe hurricanes and all that, but yet, you know, major hurricanes are not being predicted more than 2 this year, which is about even from last year's prediction. So we're not seeing that trend yet, Mr. Gore, that you claim we're going to continue to see worse hurricanes over the years to come. While we're talking about lying, we were watching the Weather Channel to get a little information on Wesley, and they were showing a ice glacier that was breaking off into the ocean. And you know, the Weather Channel was telling us that the glaciers all over the world are melting, and melting at a very fast pace, and that also is contributing to sea level rise. And you know, I get a little upset with these guys because this year they made some strides in their internet reporting. The weather company by IBM was explaining in some of their cold forecasts that the solar minimum has something to do with these cold temperatures. They didn't get real in depth about it, but the Weather Channel has had 2 articles this winter talking about the sun and its low activity driving the temperatures down, which, you know, I was proud of them for making that step. Then tonight I'm watching this new young guy, and he's talking about, you know, sea level rise because, you know, the ice caps are melting at an alarming rate and whatnot. And I had to turn the channel. I couldn't watch it. It made me sick. So it's hard. It's like, you know, you rely on the Weather Channel to give you your current, you know, updates with your radars and all that stuff, and then you hear them talk about the climate as if they know exactly what causes warming and, you know, man-made, you know, talking about things that aren't even happening right now, which we had a ton of ice gain this year, which, you know, grand solar minimum, we have bragged about that all year long. Some guy kind of trolled me in a comment section months ago about, oh, you won't show the ice growth because it's weak and it's terrible, and he was right. When we started watching this in 2018, I was like, oh God, this is kind of embarrassing. But then we kind of went through a rapid freeze from December, January, and February, and it strengthened. And going into 2019, we had better ice growth than we had seen in several years. So it'll be interesting to watch where we start from in 2020, as we are predicted to see, I think, less hurricanes this year. And really, I think we'll see cooler temperatures at an earlier part of the summer this year. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but as we continue to get deeper into this minimum, 2019 and 2020 winter is predicted to be a doozy, just like this one was in 2018. 17 and 18 was kind of like the warm-up. But this year and next year, I mean, we're really going to see things ramp up. And to me, we got to come up with better planning and recovery efforts if this kind of weather is going to continue to happen for the next 3 to 5 years, possibly, at least. So here's another thing that's kind of troubling. I'm looking at the farm report, and I'm only going to show this map tonight. And the reason I'm on this map tonight is that we are missing a chunk of information. And again, you can thank Noah. But in the white part of the United States, those are the states that have decreased in moisture in the soil index. And guys, by the way, we're looking at these numbers here. I know you're looking at the legend like, oh my gosh, it says down at the bottom that above 3, some drying but excessively wet. That's, that means you can't work in the fields at all. But if you look at these numbers, for instance, let's zoom in a little bit more. Let's go in here. All right, so for instance, we're looking at this 11. Well, on this scale here, it's not 11, it's a 1.1. Same thing down here in Louisiana, it's not 22, it's at a 2.2. So let's look up on the legend what that means. And a 2.2 would qualify as more dry weather needed, work delayed. And you look in here in parts of Louisiana where we have 2.9, 4.2, and 3.6. So there is nowhere, obviously, we just had a bunch of rain in the southern part of the region. And I'll get more into that with the GFS report too here on the outlook, because this is only the beginning for the South. And then we go back into the heartland. Right now, they're just kind of exhaling from all the flooding they've had up here. And now this new storm, Winter Storm Wesley, these areas that are in like the 9 here in South Dakota, that's going to go way up here in the next 48 hours to 72 hours. So this region here is going to get pummeled with moisture, snow, lots of it, guys. Feet of snow, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But I thought it was troubling a little bit that usually with this report, we have a map that shows us how many days are workable in the fields. And, sadly enough here, they've excluded that graphic in their crop report here for March 31st through April 6th. So we will keep our eyes out for the next report, and hopefully we get a better idea of what states are looking at, workable days in the fields, because this is getting crucial now. We're in mid-April, and we're talking about blizzard-like conditions.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.